All right, so I'm out here at arguably my happy place. It's good to be out. I haven't gotten to fish much for me, and that's something that today I made some time to do. Realistically, I didn't necessarily budget my time very well because I tried something different and fished some other spots and some different watersheds that I haven't been to in a while, kind of marginal stuff to a degree. And long story short, only processed like 4 small fish. So what I've done is I've come back to something I'm quite comfortable with. I only have about an hour and a half, and I feel pretty confident that with our, tight lining setup, just a standard monorig, runs about 25 feet in length, put them on the website, and then I've got 6X tippet tied to 2 different flies. The 2 flies that I'm using today right now are simply Waltz worms. One is a very plain standard copper, and then the other is a green or olive Waltz that has a pink bead. So we're gonna fish through this particular area. Fish have still been sitting in the riffles and runs. They're not quite wintered up yet, sitting in the deep stuff. So my hope is in the faster shoots and in water, we can pick up, maybe 5-6 fish in an hour. And then maybe if we're lucky, pick up one, fish of substance where maybe it's 10 inches or more. So let's give it a shot. Let's see how we do, and we'll change flies and give you updates as necessary. But for now, we're just gonna, fish right through here and see how things go. And actually, one thing we're gonna do here in a second is the green weenie has been really good to me through the summer and fall, and because we're on a tight time frame and I want to kind of put some fish in the basket, and I know that realistically we just want good flies that'll do that, we're going to switch out the standard Waltz, which yesterday as I fished after a guide trip, which went really well, but inevitably right after the guide trip ended, we were fishing with more natural stuff. But throughout the guide trip we kind of bounced between natural at the end and something that's a little bit more impressionistic / junky in the green weenie. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put on a green weenie, see if these fish respond to kind of this hot pattern. And the nice part about a green weenie is that we'll fish and fish well not only through the summer but into the fall, and lastly through the winter. There's really arguably no bad time to fish it, but I find that one of the best times to fish it is going to be during the late summer and fall, and we find ourselves squarely in fall. So we got it tied on there, got our double surgeon's knot. Water's about 2 feet deep, so we got about 3 feet of total tippet and flies, fishing one more in the middle of the column and fishing one on the bottom. The green weenie is a 3.5 millimeter bead, so it's a little heavy, but it will anchor the system and get down. And then the Waltz worm is a 2.8, and these are size 14 and 16. So both flies that I carry on the website, but it really just varies, what my availability is for what flies I have that you can get at any given point. There we go. Little guy, he almost hung me up on the rocks too. There we go. Took the Waltz worm. So one little thing about using something like a Waltz, which is super plain, drab, plain to them, and something that looks like a scud or a sow bug, or if nothing else, crest, something like that. And when you're fishing tailwaters and or spring creeks, they're definitely present. But there we go, one on the board, pretty brown. Let's keep it going. But the reality is, like, when you fish something a little bit more natural up top and you've got something that's kind of an attention getter on the bottom, it's not uncommon that you'll actually catch a good bit of your fish, not just on the the junk or the attractor, but actually on the natural. And I really think that there's something to be said for the fact that, like, fish will find your setup and find your flies through the bright one, but ultimately take the natural. So you'll have luck with that when you're using eggs, mops, you know, squirmies, or in this case, a green weenie. So see if we can't grab a couple more. There's a fish. Little guy. Almost didn't even register that, but yet again, another one for the olive waltz worm. See you, bud. I knew I was getting little pecks and eats as I was coming through, but they weren't big enough to really register a ton of the takes, so I was having to kind of set on my own. And we're definitely to that time of year where the leaf hatch is in full force. I mean, thankfully we're not crazy throughout the river, but the leaves are on the bottom, and it's impacting fishing to a degree. Not greatly, but you got to be mindful of the fact that you're gonna, there we go, a nice one for the green weenie. But you got to be mindful that you're gonna definitely catch some leaves. There we go. Beautiful little wild brownie. It's good to be fishing in the fall. Love getting all these wild browns. They're gonna be spawning soon. We're not there yet, but probably for this river system, another 2, maybe 3 weeks, and they're gonna be in full force. So it'll be time to watch out for the reds and let these fish do their thing. This should yield a fish or 2. Perfect, right on that edge of the soft seam. And it got smoked. Try it again. Another good drop in. Just a smidge heavy. So we'll change our sighter angle and we'll make it just a little bit more horizontal. See if that can't keep us off the bottom a little bit more. So might be better off just doing a single fly or something a little smaller, but let's hit this far side. There we go. Ooh, that's a double. Double your pleasure and double your fun. Come on. There we go. 1 and 2. All right. We don't get that on camera often. Doubles. Very cool. Wonder how close they were sitting together. All right, let's get this guy back. The little one fell through the net, but that's quite normal. There we go, off and running. But basically for those 2, we had a nice hard pause off of that far seam. Basically we got a hard riffle coming in. We've got a bubble line that's nice and soft over there, and we're talking about the transition between, you know, fall and or summer water. And a lot of times the summer water and the heavy riffles, the highly oxygenated, you know, faster moving water that usually stays a little bit cooler, that's where you can find your fish many times in the summer. But the reality is we're not quite out of summer mode yet. These fish, there's another eat. These fish are kind of staging between the two, so you can have success in a little bit of everything, which is kind of fun and definitely keeps you honest. But those particular fish were again sitting on that far side in the somewhat slower water, and very unique to get two fish of that different caliber size sitting right next to each other and hooked up. So little guy took the waltz and the bigger guy took the green weenie. So like I said, they're available on the website as long as, you know, I've got inventory and time. But great little flies. They'll work for you summer, fall, winter. Another little tap. But a waltz worm, that'll work everywhere. You can't beat a traditional waltz or an olive waltz, you know, all the variations, the sexy waltz. It's hard to go wrong with a waltz worm. They work in spring creeks, tailwaters, freestoners, anywhere you go. So today I've literally, I mean, and I do mean this literally, I've been to a spring influence creek, I've been to a tailwater, and I've been to a freestoner. And in that time, although this morning I didn't catch a ton, but in that time I used only waltz worms until I got here, and I caught fish now on this river and those other two on waltz, both in standard and olive. So I promise you, if you have waltz in your box and you're buying some from the website, they will work anywhere you go. Ooh, almost took a spill. Instead caught a fish. Ah, lost a fish. Almost walked right down and took a plunge, and luckily got a fish to eat on the backside of the drift, but let his head get to the surface trying to bring him over, and he popped off. But got another one, so we'll take it. Two guys sitting in there. Took a waltz worm. Again, popular fly today on the menu. Another little beautiful wild brownie. Let's try over here. There's a chute, but a hydraulic cushion. So basically there's a rock up ahead that's kind of like slowing the current down behind it. And this is a good area for trout to sit. It's soft. Got neat. It's soft, but still has, you know, good flow and good current. So it's bringing the food, but most importantly, it's giving them a place that they can find refuge and not work. It's hard to sit in it. So, you know, when you find these impressions in these little areas that basically a rock has given you a little bit of a soft spot or a soft seam, you know, fish them, because inevitably you're going to find that trout sit in that water and they get easy opportunities to kind of intercept and pick off bugs. So no hits there, but we'll play with that same concept right up here. See how it goes. So again, big rock up ahead, hydraulic cushion in the back. They'll sit on the front side of it and they'll sit on the back side of it as well. So you can fish all areas, which is kind of fun, especially when you get them on the front side. You drift a nymph right to the kind of the point of a rock where the water's shooing around from both sides. But nevertheless, we're gonna fish the back side of it. And usually with these rocks, what it'll do is it'll create a distinct kind of V that comes around on both sides. And nevertheless, you can fish the lanes where the current is, where it's kind of like really pushing. But you can also fish, there we go. You can also fish, another one for the waltz worm. You can also fish the areas where directly behind the rock, and that's kind of where he was. He was between the two. He was close to the faster water, but also sitting in the slower stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna get this rig undone, and then we'll get back to fishing and finish this out. We should be able to get at least 2 or 3 more. Things are really, really, really good right now. So let me get this fixed and we'll get back. All right, so we're back to fishing, same run. One piece of advice that, you know, I probably should have just left the camera rolling to show you the concept, but the idea is I had a pretty nasty tangle there. Things were all kind of befuddled and wrapped around themselves, knotted up, etc., etc. So the moral of the story is that, like, when you run into scenarios that your stuff is really messed up, you know, early in my fishing career, I would take the time to try to like back everything through and independently get out each little knot or, you know, loop in it. And what I've come to find is you are way better off cutting your flies, pulling the tippet or the line kind of out, and just straightening everything and putting tension on it. It does you a world of good just to cut off your flies, and not even the tippet, just cut off the flies, pull everything out, and get everything back in line. So again, a hydraulic cushion, finding these rocks, getting these soft spots, fishing the water that's, you know, not only coming around both sides, but specifically right up the middle of it, you'll get a nice soft impression. So the other thing I was mentioning is, like, fish will sit on the front side of the rock. You know, I have a little confidence in the idea that we could pick one out, but I'll show you what I mean. So now we're fishing the top side of that rock and just bringing our flies right down into the front side. So you get a cushion on the back as well as the front. The only downfall is that sometimes you snag the rock when you try to fish the front. So you kind of have to get in the habit of pulling your flies out in time. But those hydraulic cushions are present on both areas, and they're worthy of fishing both sides. So this is where we're gonna end our day. This is a great little section for, you know, riffles and pocket water. You know, it's really just one nice long uniform riffle. So we should be able to grab another fish or two in water like this with how everything else has gone today. So we're gonna go that horizontal lead approach, try to stay out in front, really minimize the fact that these bugs are diving to the bottom. And see if we can't get another wild brown or two. Got to get a little closer to that foam line. Hit the far side, we're working out to it. I typically will go from inside to out, fish closest to furthest. There we go. Now we're in it. Good spot for a trout to be. There we go. Ooh, another one for the waltz, but he popped off right at the net. So, like we said, foam is home. Find it and fish it. Ah, it's another one. These fish are active, fired up. There we go. Another take. I wasn't managing my line correctly and missed an eat. I was not fluid to be able to pick up the excess line, and as a result you miss eats whenever you do that. You gotta really know how to manage line when you're Euro nymphing, especially the further you cast. If you're making, you know, a 20-25 foot cast, you gotta manage your line. You gotta, whether it's a hand twist or what I like to do is a pulley system that Dom from Trout Bitten has kind of popularized, but there we go. That time we managed our line, and as a result we're able to pick up the slack and basically put that fish in the basket because we got the fly in the strike zone, we had good tension, and we're able to detect and eat. Whenever you don't have, or excuse me, whenever you lose the ability to have that tension and or the strike detection, you really put yourself at a disadvantage. So for example, one thing I see people doing around on guide trips is they'll make a low cast, then they have to lift up to find the sighter. By now we've lost, you know, 5 feet of a drift, 7 feet, and you're really missing opportunities. A lot of your fish are going to eat right after the bug hits the water and on the descent, or in the first third of the drift. So in essence, your line management, when you make these longer casts like we just did there, you know, I'll put it between my index finger and my middle finger, or just one, and then as a result just do like one clean strip down to my hip. And if you do that, you're managing your line, you're being able to pick up the slack, and as a result you can really register the takes on the front side of a drift that many other people will kind of mess up, and as a result lose a lot of opportunities. All right, so we're getting to the point that we're almost running out of water. We'll probably try to get 1 or 2 more, and then we're gonna call it a day and head home to see the kids and hopefully have a little bit of fun. Maybe go to the park, do something outside. It is beautiful. Hopefully you've been able to get out and enjoy some of this nice fall weather, whether it's fishing, doing stuff with your family, or you know, just enjoying the outdoors in some way, shape, or form. But I really like this left lane of current and that right side. Again, back to hydraulic cushions. Find your lanes, learn them, and as soon as you start fishing your lanes correctly and getting dialed in with you know, line management and detecting strikes, man, what a world of difference it can be for the Euro Nymphing game. There we go, another one. That one took the waltz. But again, just know your basics, do the fundamentals, and do them well. And if you do those things, you're gonna catch a lot of fish, as evidenced by what's happened here today. We've been very fortunate to get a bunch of browns to the net on things like a waltz worm, just a standard little olive, and a you know, that's in size 16, and then your green weenie. Both of those flies produced pretty much even numbers of fish. But the keys to success were landing your drift, or excuse me, landing your cast, making sure that, you know, your bugs enter the water first, and making sure that you're in contact and up on top as quickly as possible. And if you do that and you manage your line, then you detect your strikes and you start catching a lot of fish. Still a little bit of room to work here. I'm gonna cast over by this rock, let it tumble down in, gain contact, try to detect these faint little brownie bites. But any hesitation, any deviation at all from what that sighter usually does indicates it's time to set the hook. So, you know, when in doubt, set. But, you know, I probably set on, it's tough to quantify, but let's say north of 50 and maybe south of 75% of my drifts. There you go, another one. Waltz, waltz, waltz. Out in these riffles. I don't even know how many fish this is. This has been absolutely phenomenal. After a sluggish start to my morning, not really getting the results I wanted and felt like I, you know, should have maybe had if I was a little bit more dialed in, but this is great. Have to be around a dozen or more for sure, and that's only been in about 45 minutes to an hour.